Most people move to Cape Coral because they want the waterfront lifestyle. But living here comes with a few surprises that don't show up in the listing photos or the property description. So that's why today I'm covering the 10 things you must know before moving to Cape Coral, Florida. I've been helping people relocate here for almost 11 years, and these are the things I make sure every buyer understands before they make an offer. Let's get into it. Alright, the first thing you need to know about living in Cape Coral is that getting in and out of the city can cost you money. Cape Coral connects to Fort Myers by two main bridges, the Cape Coral Bridge and the Midpoint Memorial Bridge. There's no interstate running across the city. So if you're heading to work or the airport or even Costco on the other side of the river, you're probably using one of those bridges. And yes, there's a toll, but you only pay when you're coming back into Cape Coral. Going toward Fort Myers is free. So on a normal round trip, you're only paying once. But if you don't have a transponder, you'll pay an extra administrative fee on top of the base toll, which can add up fast if you cross often. So if you know you'll be using the bridges all the time, getting a leeway pass is a good idea. You can bring the toll down to around $1 with the reduced fare plan, or look into the annual unlimited option if you're crossing every day. The other thing to think about is traffic. Since those bridges are the main way between Cape Coral and Fort Myers, they can back up during the busier times of the day. So where you live and where you work can make a big difference in how much time you spend getting around. There is some relief coming. Lee County has already approved a replacement for the Cape Coral Bridge with 2 new 3-lane spans, bringing it to 6 lanes total. Construction is expected to begin in 2027. That should help with traffic, but of course, a project that big is going to take time. So if you're moving here, figure out which bridge you'll use most and get your toll pass early. And there's another thing you need to check before buying, because having a canal behind your house doesn't always mean you can take a boat to the Gulf. Now, if you're moving out of state, I can help you make that jump into Cape Coral, choosing the house and the area that works best for you. That's what I do every week. You'll see a stack of 5-star reviews from people who did it before you. If you want to reach out, my info's in the description, or scan the QR code on the screen. Alright, let's get back to it. The second thing you need to know is that not every canal in Cape Coral takes you to the Gulf of America. Cape Coral has more than 400 miles of canals, and that's one of the things the city is known for. But some of those canals are freshwater and landlocked, so you could look at 2 homes with water in the backyard and be looking at 2 very different properties, and you can't always tell from the listing photos. Both homes might have a dock and the same nice water view, but one has Gulf access and the other one doesn't. That difference can add tens of thousands of dollars to the price, and in some cases even hundreds of thousands compared to a similar home just a few streets away. So before you fall in love with a waterfront home, check if the canal has Gulf access, because that can have a big impact on what you're going to pay. Freshwater canals can still be a great option though, especially if taking your own boat to the Gulf isn't a priority. You still get the water views and you can use the canal for kayaking or fishing. The water's calmer too, so you don't have the same saltwater corrosion on your dock, and you can save quite a bit of money while still enjoying life on the water. If you want to go boating on the Gulf from time to time, there are marinas and boat rentals around the area, so you don't need to pay the Gulf access premium just to get out on the water. Just make sure you know which type of canal you're buying on before you get attached to the house. There's another thing you'll want to check before making an offer, because it can leave one buyer with a much bigger bill than the next. I'll explain that in a minute. But let me tell you first one of those Cape Coral quirks you probably wouldn't expect before moving here. The burrowing owl is one of the stranger things about living in Cape Coral, because this tiny animal can have a say in what you do with your own yard. Cape Coral has thousands of them living right in residential neighborhoods, and they're a protected species. So if one decides to make a burrow in your front yard or on an empty lot you own, you can't just move it and go on with your plans. During nesting season, there has to be a protected area around the burrow, so you may end up with stakes and caution tape around part of your own property. And while the owls are there, you have to leave that area alone, which can affect what you were planning to do with it. But people around here have embraced them. Cape Coral even has an annual burn owl festival, and some homeowners build starter burrows because they want a family to move into their yard. So they may get in the way of your plans for a while, but some people end up loving having them around. It's one of those strange little things you get used to living in Cape Coral. But the next quirk can cost you quite a bit more if you don't know about it before you buy. The Utilities Extension Project, or UEP, is one of those things you need to check before buying a home in Cape Coral. Parts of the city are still on private wells and septic systems, because that's how those neighborhoods were built. But as Cape Coral has grown, the city has been bringing water and sewer service into more areas, and the homeowners in those neighborhoods help pay for that work. Depending on the property, that assessment can run into tens of thousands of dollars. So 2 homes with a similar price can come with very different costs. One may already have the assessment paid off, while the other could still have a big balance attached to it. The good news is you don't have to pay the full amount all at once, because the city lets homeowners spread the cost out over 20, 25, or even 30 years. years. And if the home is already connected and the assessment is paid off, you don't have to worry about that expense coming later. So before you move forward with a home, ask if it's in a UEP area and whether there's still a balance. You want to know that early because finding out later can mean thousands of dollars in costs you weren't planning for. And the way Cape Coral is laid out can surprise you too, especially when you start driving around the city. That's number 5 on our list. Cape Coral is not built like most cities this size. There's no one main downtown where everything is centered. It's spread out, so depending on where you live, the places you go every day may be in different parts of the city. You'll find businesses and restaurants along Pine Island Road and El Prado, with more around Veterans Parkway and Cape Coral Parkway. You also don't have a major highway running across Cape Coral, so if you need to get from one end of the city to the other, you're taking local roads, and that can take longer than you think. That's why choosing the right part of Cape Coral can make a big difference in your daily drive. South Cape along Cape Coral Parkway is the closest thing we have to a downtown. It's not like downtown Fort Myers, but it has come a long way. You've got restaurants and nightlife there, and during certain events, there's even a trolley that takes people around that area. And in a little bit, I'll explain why living in a city surrounded by water doesn't always mean the kind of beach days people picture before they move here. Now, you may notice something else if you're moving from an older city. Cape Coral doesn't have as many mature trees lining the streets. That's because most of the city was built starting in the late 1950s, so the neighborhoods just haven't had as much time to grow into that big tree canopy you see in older communities. Besides, the city is still recovering from all the trees that were damaged after Hurricane Ian. That's why the city has been planting more trees over the years, but for now, the streets are more open and get a lot more sun than you might be used to. That newer layout shows up in another way during part of the year too. Once the snowbirds arrive, getting around town takes a little more patience, and that brings us to number 6. One thing that surprises a lot of people after they move here is how different Cape Coral is during snowbird season. Cape Coral has been ranked among the top snowbird destinations in the country. From about November through April, the snowbirds come back, so the roads get busier, restaurant waits get longer, and even the bridge traffic we talked about earlier can slow down your commute. Then summer comes around and things settle back down. Traffic eases up, it's easier to get a table at your favorite restaurant, and everyday errands take less time. After you live here for a full year, you know when the busy season is coming and can plan around it. For a lot of full-time residents, those quieter summer months end up being one of their favorite times of the year. But living this close to the water also comes with another cost that's worth knowing beforehand. Living near the Gulf of America also means homeowners insurance is going to cost more than it does in many other places. Homeowners insurance in Lee County runs somewhere in the low to mid $3,000 a year, and that's before flood insurance, which is usually a separate policy. If you're buying a Gulf access home, those two policies together can easily cost more than $5,000 a year. That's been one of the biggest changes since Hurricane Ian, so it's something you want to include in your budget before you buy. There is some good news though. Newer homes in Cape Coral are built to very strict hurricane code, so they're designed to stand up better during storms. Features like impact windows and hurricane straps help, and many newer homes are also built higher in flood zones. That can help lower insurance costs, especially if you also get a wind mitigation inspection, which may qualify you for additional discounts. And speaking of all that water, there's one more thing you should know. Cape Coral is surrounded by water, but it doesn't have the wide, white sand Gulf beaches most people picture when they think about Florida. Inside Cape Coral, you'll find river beaches along the Caloosahatchee instead. If you want a Gulf beach, you'll need to drive to Fort Myers Beach or Sanibel. Depending on where you live, Fort Myers Beach is about 30 minutes away and Sanibel is usually around 30 to 45 minutes. That's also why so many people here spend time on the water instead of at the beach. Boating is a big part of life in Cape Coral, and if you have a boat, you can reach beaches and islands that most people only get to by water. That's just a different way of enjoying the water, and for a lot of people, it's one of the best parts of living here. There's one thing about dining in Cape Coral that's changed a lot over the last few years. We'll finish with that because it surprises a lot of people. Before we get there, there's one more thing about Cape Coral's roads that's worth knowing before you move here. Driving around Cape Coral takes a little getting used to, especially when it comes to the speed limits. The city is flat and most of the roads are long and straight. There aren't many hills or curves slowing you down, so it's easy to drive faster than you mean to without realizing it. Police take the speed limits seriously, so it's worth keeping an eye on your speed, especially while you're still learning your way around. Another thing you'll notice is how many four-way stops there are. Cape Coral was planned on a big grid years ago, and you'll see the same layout over in Lehigh Acres too. The city has been replacing some of the busier intersections with traffic lights, but there are still plenty of four-way stops. If you're not used to them, take an extra second to make sure you know who has the right of way. So yes, you'll probably have to slow down a little more than you're used to, but that's also part of what makes Cape Coral's neighborhoods such a good place for people walking, riding bikes, and families with kids. Let's finish with one of the biggest changes Cape Coral has seen over the last few years. Cape Coral used to be known mostly for chain restaurants, and for a long time, that reputation fit. These days though, there are local places all over the city. Bimini Basin is a good place to start. Around Bimini Square, the Cove, and Slipaway, you got several restaurants within just a few minutes of each other. Slipaway is an open air food truck park right on the water, so you can grab something to eat, sit outside with a drink, and even pull up by boat if you're out on the water that day. And that's not the only area worth checking out. You'll find authentic Cuban restaurants, Italian places that locals recommend all the time, and fresh Gulf seafood all across the city. One of the best examples is Old Cuban Restaurant. It's tucked into a shopping plaza next to a fitness center. Finn's Seafood and Dive Bar is another. From the outside, it doesn't look like anything special, but people keep coming back for the fresh seafood and laid-back atmosphere. That's probably the biggest surprise. Years ago, people came here expecting mostly chain restaurants. Today, some of the places people recommend first are local restaurants. None of these things are deal breakers. You just want to know about them before you buy, because they can make a big difference in which home and even which part of Cape Coral is the right fit for you. If you're thinking about buying in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, or Lehigh Acres, and you have questions about a specific home, send me an email at german@swflhouses.com today. I'll help you understand what to look for before you make a decision. If you're thinking about moving here, I'd watch this next video too. It covers how Cape Coral enforces its rules, and that's something every buyer should understand before making a move. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.